Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras.
And I'm Natasha Kircha. Coming up in today's newscast, a vacation turns into a nightmare. Up to 14 Israelis are stuck on a cruise ship off of Japan, where more than 130 people are infected with the coronavirus.
Next, welcome home. It looks like Israel is about to have another wave of immigration from Africa.
And later, the Oscars may have ended, but we have the scoop on which Oscar predictions actually came true. Now, this is just unbelievable. An estimated 8 to 14 Israelis are believed to be stuck on a cruise ship anchored off of Japan under quarantine because more than 60 cases of coronavirus have been diagnosed on it. Now, I can't even imagine the terror of being unable to get off.
No, it's truly unimaginable. But now, we reported on the Diamond Princess cruise ship last week after it was moored off of Japan, and at the time there were only about 10 suspected cases of coronavirus, but now 130 passengers and crew are believed to be infected with the disease.
Now, the Israeli Foreign Ministry says it's in contact with the families of the Israelis on board and is also monitoring the situation via the consul in Tokyo. And as of now, none of the Israelis have reportedly been diagnosed. Over 3,700 people were on board when the ship docked, and dozens were initially evacuated after testing positive for the virus.
Those who remain on board have been asked to stay inside their cabins and are allowed out only briefly onto open decks. They also have to wear masks and keep a distance from one another. It's kind of a nightmare.
An absolute nightmare. Well, the ship is apparently expected to stay in quarantine until February 19th. That's another 9 days. 9 days. Now, this comes after another coronavirus scare in Israel. Apparently, soldiers from one of the Eastern Asian countries that was hit the hardest by the illness have been allowed to come into Israel to participate in a military exercise in the south.
Now, Israel reportedly decided to go ahead with the drill as planned to avoid harming relations with the country in question. But these soldiers have been engaging in direct contact with Israeli soldiers, so there has been some backlash. And the Israeli Health Ministry has advised Israelis against traveling to 7 East Asian countries now and destinations, including mainland China, of course, because of the coronavirus.
The Foreign Ministry is concerned that the move is actually going to cause diplomatic damage since no other country has warned its nationals against visiting anywhere but China. But still, the coronavirus has killed at least 811 people as of now and infected more than 37,000. So you can understand why the government is doing this.
Absolutely.
Now, moving on, Ethiopian families across Israel are celebrating because almost 400 members of the Ethiopian Falashmura community will now be able to immigrate to Israel. Hundreds of Ethiopian families are about to be reunited with their loved ones after a long and hard wait. Almost 400 members of the Falashmura community have received approval to immigrate to Israel. They've been waiting for years to join their families under the law of return, but because they aren't considered Jewish by the Israeli government, they've had to receive special permission. The Falashmura are Ethiopian Jews whose ancestors converted to Christianity generations ago under duress. And today there are an estimated 8,000 tribe members living in Ethiopia. Last year, a budget was approved to bring at least 1,000 of them to Israel, but so far only 600 have come. And some claim that the Israeli Prime Minister is pushing forward bringing the final 400 to Israel as part of a campaign ploy just before the March elections.
הממשלה תאשר היום את הבאתם לישראל של עוד כ-400 עולים מאתיופיה. אני גאה בכך שכראש ממשלה הייתה לי הזכות לעלות אלפים מאחינו ואחיותינו באתיופיה.
About 140,000 Ethiopian Jews live in Israel today, about 22,000 of which were airlifted to Israel during Operation Moses in 1984 and Operation Solomon in 1991. But their assimilation into Israeli society hasn't exactly been smooth. Many arrive without a modern education and the tools necessary to build a life in Israel, and end up in poverty or unemployed. And 2019 saw widespread protests against institutionalized racism and police brutality against the Ethiopian Israeli community. This week, the Israeli cabinet has also voted to create a special panel to probe the police's internal investigations unit, amid allegations that police who abuse members of the Ethiopian community are not properly prosecuted.
כמובן שאנחנו נמשיך לפעול בארץ בכל הכוח נגד ביטויי גזענות בכל מקום, ובוודאי בכל חלק של הממשלה וגם של הציבור. אנחנו יוצאים נגד זה, אנחנו מבינים באמת את התחושות של בני העדה ובנות העדה.
All right, now one of the 12 Israeli soldiers who were wounded in a car ramming attack last week in Jerusalem has now been identified as a lone soldier from the United States. What was supposed to be one of the proudest moments of their lives turned into a tragedy for a dozen young Israeli soldiers last Thursday morning. They were on their way to their swearing-in ceremony to the elite Golani Brigade when a car rammed into them as they stood next to the Jerusalem's popular First Station Entertainment Center. Oli Hammond was one of the 12 injured, a young man who immigrated to Israel from San Diego just a year ago. And Oli joined the IDF in November, becoming one of thousands of lone soldiers who serve in the Israeli army despite not being obligated to. Well, Oli is currently being hospitalized for his injuries, and Jewish Agency Chairman Isaac Herzog met with his mother at the San Diego Jewish Academy, where she teaches Hebrew to offer moral support. Oli's mother, Chagit, also says that she had spoken to her son just hours before the attack to remind him to wear warm clothes for the ceremony, never thinking that he would need more than just protection from the cold. A crowdfunding campaign to pay for her flight to Israel to be at Oli's bedside has raised more than $10,000 in just 24 hours.
Well, the Democratic primaries are continuing with the next debate scheduled on February 19th. And as of now, Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg are leading the pack with 12 and 13 delegates, respectively. And joining us now is the founder and president of the Jerusalem Washington Center, Gideon Israel, who will be breaking down where the Democratic candidates stand when it comes to Israel in the coming weeks. Now, everyone's talking about Bernie Sanders. He has had a lot of success so far on the campaign trail.
He has. He's building on the movement that he built in 2016, which was really quite impressive, because you had a guy who was a backbench senator, not so well known, and he came out of nowhere to challenge the Clinton machine. And he started when he entered the race, he was like 70 points behind. And this guy, with his ideas, he went out, he convinced people with small dollar donations. He didn't take money from billionaires and PACs. He went out and convinced people, and he really challenged. He really gave a fight to Hillary Clinton. And now, 4 years later, he has all that base built, and the country has also, and especially the Democratic Party, has moved farther to the left. So he's in the center of things.
Where does he fall on Israel policy?
Right.
Because we know that historically he's made a lot of comments that...
Well, he's been viewed as anti-Israel.
He has.
Right. So I would divide it into three. There's Bernie Sanders' rhetoric, there's action, and then there's his advisors. In rhetoric, he's been advocating what he calls even-handedness, but that's kind of a deceiving language, because when Israel is surrounded by enemies, and you say, well, we're going to be even-handed with Israel and
Hamas
and the Palestinians. So that's kind of a little deceptive. So he's against the settlements. That's illegal. That's occupation for him, and that has to stop. And while he's been against BDS, he does not support anti-BDS legislation, because he says that impedes free speech. So he's a candidate that has the ability to sort of break the consensus of sort of a pro-Israel stance from the United States. If he were to be president, the idea of viewing Israel as a strategic ally, he never talks about Israel as a strategic ally. He simply views the issue of Israel and the Palestinians as, yes, Israel has the right to exist, but let's focus on the Palestinians who have not received the United States support for the past 50, 60 years.
Talk a little bit to us about the people in his administration. Who would be the people in his administration?
So I think, just as sort of a headline, you could say, imagine Donald Trump's administration and the exact opposite.
Okay.
The people who are going to be in the Oval Office, with Bernie Sanders when he's discussing Israel policy, are people like James Zogby, head of the Arab American Institute, who has been known for various anti-Israel comments. You're going to have people like Linda Sarsour, who's been a surrogate to him, who said that if you're, how can you be against white supremacy and also support Israel? You're going to have people like Matt Duss and Faiz Shakir. Matt Duss is his foreign policy advisor, and he's promoted anti-Semitic conspiracy theories when he worked at the Center for American Progress. And you also have Cornel West, who's talked about the occupation that needs to end. And Cornel West and James Zogby were actually on the platform committee in 2016, trying to get the idea of Israeli occupation into the platform, taking out the BDS language. So these are the people that are going to be talking to Bernie Sanders in the Oval Office about Israel policy. And unlike the Obama administration, where you had the older advisors like Hillary Clinton, Dennis Ross, who were pro-Israel, and you also had the younger advisors who weren't so in favor of an Israeli alliance, you're not going to have any of that in this Oval Office. It's just going to be people who don't view Israel, with any value.
Thank you so much for joining us with this update. We'll see you next week, and we're going to be breaking down the other Democratic candidates. After years in development, Israel's finally rolling out the production of its new advanced armored personnel carriers, and they're built with all of the knowledge gained in the 2014 Gaza war.
The 8-ton APC is making its serial debut, and it's a sight to see. At just a fraction of the cost of its contemporaries, the 8-wheeled vehicle combines all of the best parts of the Israeli Merkava tank and the Namer armored personnel carrier. Starting now, the 35-ton vehicle will be replacing the currently used American-made M113. What does this mean, though? Well, practically speaking, the 8-ton, which was developed both in Israel and the US, goes faster and has better security for its occupants than other models. And in fact, the IDF says the 8-ton APC will provide better adaptability to all relevant combat scenarios, while boasting advanced combat capabilities in the world's most well-protected APC. As for its technical specs, well, the 8-ton is 8 meters or 30 feet long and 3 meters or 10 feet wide. It rocks a 750 HP engine and can coast at roughly 90 kilometers an hour on pavement. Plus, it hosts vastly improved suspension, body, and armor systems. Finally, it's operated by a commander, a gunner, and a driver, and it can carry up to 9 additional fighters.
Now, this next story is just an odd one altogether, honestly.
Yeah, there's apparently a town in the Netherlands that has several streets named after cities in Israel, but the street signs all indicate that the said cities are located in the state of Palestine, and the controversy has caused an uproar.
Yeah, the Dutch town is called Eindhoven, and it's come under fire by Dutch Jews and Israeli advocates alike for attempting to wipe Israel off the map literally with these signs. Jerusalem, Nazareth, and Tiberias are just 3 of the Israeli cities that the streets in Eindhoven have been named after, and the signs identify these cities as being located in Palestine. And the Dutch city agreed to change them back in 2014, but it's now postponed that in a correction indefinitely.
Now, on Friday, the municipal spokesperson said the reference to Palestine was to biblical Palestine and that the signs will be changed, but it's not on the table anytime soon. All right, now changing speed for a moment, we want to discuss a heartbreaking incident that is shining a spotlight on a very difficult topic. 2 young ultra-Orthodox women, cousins actually, have just committed suicide in Jerusalem, and the pressures driving their actions, explained in a note, may sound terrifyingly familiar. But what happened, and how can we as a society work to prevent this from happening again? Well, joining us to discuss is Israeli psychologist Dr. Camila Folkosh-Levan. So first, tell us a little bit about the primary reasons that contributed to this tragedy. Tell us what happened.
From what we understand, there was sexual abuse within the family. And so this is something, sexual abuse in general is a very, very difficult topic and has huge ramifications for the victim. But those become tenfold, if not more, when it happens within the family, because now the victim doesn't have, or the target doesn't have where to go basically for safety. Right. And so all the difficulties, all the of coping and feeling that maybe they were to blame somehow, or maybe they did something wrong, or who to speak to, or look for protection. Now they don't really have where to go.
Well, in addition to that, we understand that the alleged perpetrator in the sexual abuse was released and is out and about in their community still, right. And so that must have been somewhat of a contributor.
So how common are struggles like this within the religious and also secular communities here in Israel? Because this story has particularly highlighted issues that are within the ultra-Orthodox community.
Right. So they're actually from Chabad, which is not that ultra-Orthodox, but Orthodox, yes, more heavily Orthodox. But the issue is, and it's good that you asked about in general communities, yes. So if we take the more secular communities, so there is a little bit more openness as far as the discussion about sexual abuse and what what it means and things like that. So maybe people will be more likely to seek help, although not always, and I will come back to that in a minute. But as far as more religious or closed communities, this becomes an issue because shaming becomes higher, and there's also consideration of shidduchim and how that will affect the family and the brothers and sisters and what this will mean. And in every community, plus minus, this happens where, doesn't matter if it's religious or not, where there is this reluctance to bring dirty laundry, so to speak, out of the family, into the public.
We understand that one of the victims was actually seeing a professional psychologist and was in treatment and then stopped because of pressures from the family.
Exactly.
Like you mentioned.
Exactly. And another one was trying to also, from what we all, again, from the reports, that was moving away from the religious community, which also, of course, is a very stressful situation because now all these questions of, am I going to be accepted? I'm not going to be accepted. What will this mean? Right. And if on top of that there is trauma, this becomes very, very difficult.
So what are some of the stigmas that I think you mentioned before, or that you were going to mention?
So it seems almost like impossible to believe, but really, it's interesting that whoever is the victim often ends up being the one that's blamed. And if it happens within the family, so often the family members will not believe the child, or at some point when, by the time if a person speaks up, a lot of times they're already more adult. And many of them just don't even speak up.
Right.
But I just want to answer this question. They will either not believe or will not want to take sides or whatever. They will give these messages of just move on. Just, this didn't really happen. It's not a big deal. Why are you a drama queen?
So what can be done if you find yourself in a situation where you're experiencing abuse in your family and no one's listening?
Or really any of these stressors that are contributing to potential suicide?
Right. One of the biggest things that I would like to kind of put out there, that there isn't really a situation, unless someone's, I don't know, holding you at gunpoint every day, but really there's no situation that the end result should be suicide. Look around, see if you really, really are in a tough place, in a bad situation, reach out to somebody. There's a way to get out of that situation. And it shouldn't only be by suicide. And it's easy to understand how a person can get to that place because they feel like, that's it, I'm hopeless, I just cannot get out. And but do search, do go out, do go ask something. There's someone there that will help you.
All right. Dr. Folkosh-Lavan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, speaking of reasons to be excited, today is New Year's for the trees, aka the Jewish holiday of Tu BiShvat. And of course, we're joined by ILTV's Nittany Manson, who's here to tell us more. Nittany, what is Tu BiShvat? Let's start there.
All right, so Tu BiShvat is the New Year's for the tree, but before we get into that, let's take a step back. On the Jewish calendar, there's actually 4 New Years that we celebrate. So on the regular calendar, on the secular one, there's the school year, the beginning of the fiscal year, things like that. And so the Jewish calendar is no different. There's 4 different days. The first one is Nisan, the first of Nisan, which is around Passover, and it marks the Jews leaving slavery and going into freedom.
So the Exodus.
Right. The Exodus, right. So that's one new year that we celebrate. The next one is Elul, which is kind of like April 15th in the States, the tax day.
All right.
It is actually the day that we marked paying our taxes. This one we don't really use anymore, but it's just like in the States.
It's all done automatically here.
It's all automatic. We don't need to mark it. And then there's the first of Tishrei, which is, of course, Rosh Hashanah, which is the New Year.
So what do Israelis do on Tu BiShvat?
So this holiday is mostly known for planting trees. As we said, it's the New Year of the tree. It marks the day, the end of winter, the beginning of spring, the beginning of the time when you start seeing the blossoms and the sprouting.
Beginning of spring. It is so cold today.
It's the end of the dead of winter, and it's kind of a moving forward.
It's time to plant.
It's time to plant these trees.
So what are people doing today specifically?
So there are all kinds of events for planting trees. If you're in the States or all over the world, you can go on the JNF, the Jewish National Fund website, and you can pay to plant a tree here.
Even if you're not in Israel
Even if you're not in Israel yourself. But something that Israelis do, it's become known, you eat dried fruit. So it's a plant a tree, have some dried fruit. And
ecological awareness. And all
enjoy the nature in all of its forms.
That's my kind of
have
holiday.
a picnic.
All right, Nittany, thank you for joining us. We have plans to plant a tree
Happy
after
Tu
the show.
BiShvat.
Me too.
Well, history was made at last night's Oscars, and shockingly, it wasn't predicted correctly by Ben Zauzmer, the Jewish analyst who almost perfectly predicted last year's Oscars. And ILTV's Emmanuel Kodesh, of course, has the details on the big wins last night.
Hey guys, so we talked yesterday about the 26-year-old baseball analyst by day, Hollywood award analyst by night, Ben Zauzmer. And while a lot of his predictions were correct, one in particular wasn't, and actually ended up making history. So, according to Zauzmer, the Best Picture award would go to the film 1917 about World War I, and instead it went to the South Korean black comedy film Parasite, which became the first non-English language film to win the Best Picture award in movie history.
Which it kind of makes sense. You know, I saw that movie and it was honestly really good. It's made to look like it's going to be some sort of scary thriller, but it was very funny.
I actually didn't get to see it, and I didn't hear anything about it. What is it about?
Well, it's about a poor South Korean family that infiltrates a wealthy household. That's a very basic intro to it. And it won a total of 4 awards last night, including Best Director, Best Foreign Film, Best Foreign Language Film, Best Original Screenplay, and of course the Best Picture. So it was a pretty exciting night for the filmmaker Bong Joon-ho.
Now, I really have to watch that movie myself, but I want you to tell us a little bit about the other awards and Zauzmer's predictions. How they lined up.
Well, Zauzmer predicted that Sam Mendes would win Best Director for 1917, but was not right. Bong Joon-ho won it for Parasite. And then Joaquin Phoenix won his very first Oscar award for Best Actor, as predicted by Zauzmer. Take a look at this.
And the Oscar goes to Joaquin Phoenix, Joker.
I want to, when he was 17, my brother wrote this lyric. He said, "Run to the rescue with love, and peace will follow." Thank you.
It's beautiful.
Wow.
I definitely think he deserves it. Yeah, I mean, what he did to the Joker, I mean, he did an amazing justice.
Yeah, people
and it was
say
just
that movie, the reason that it was so good was just because of his acting.
He definitely belonged in the nominations.
Yeah, and I just love everything that he's acting in, so I'm very happy about this.
Definitely. And Zauzmer predicted correctly the award for Best Actress that went to Renee Zellweger for the film Judy. Take a look at this.
Goes to Renee Zellweger.
Ms. Garland, you are certainly among the heroes who unite and define us, and this is certainly for you. I am so grateful. Thank you so much, everybody. Good night.
Wow. Well, it's also Renee Zellweger. I mean, she's made a comeback, seriously.
Right.
Yeah.
But what other predictions of his were right?
Okay, so he predicted that the World War I film 1917 would win Best Cinematography, and it did. He predicted that the film Jojo Rabbit, which is about a young German boy finding out his mother is hiding a younger Jewish girl during World War II, would win the award for Best Adapted Screenplay award, and it did. He was also correct about Brad Pitt winning the Best Supporting Actor role for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which he definitely earned, and that Laura Dern would win Best Supporting Actress for Marriage Story, which happened as well. So he really got a lot correct.
A lot of
well,
great
honestly,
films.
yeah, we really have to start watching all of the films that he put on his predictions list. They're clearly all amazing.
Yeah, I haven't seen them all, but I saw a few, and we have a lot of movies to catch up on. But
I know.
I heard that Natalie Portman actually also made a big statement at
Very
the
big
event last
statement.
night.
The Israeli-American actress was not about to let anyone forget about the lack of female directors nominated this year. She went all out on the red carpet with a cape that featured the names of women who were overlooked in the directing category this year, including Greta Gerwig for the film Little Women and Lulu Wang for the movie The Farewell.
Honestly, such a statement piece on her part is so necessary. Women have been constantly overlooked in this category for years now, and it's crazy that not a single one was nominated.
Nope.
All right, well, I hope that next year we're going to see something different.
Me too.
But I have a lot of movies to go and watch now after this conversation.
Definitely.
Thanks, Emmanuel.
Of course.
All right, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Today has been one of the coldest days this winter in Israel, with a low of 8 degrees Celsius or 45 Fahrenheit in Tel Aviv, and partly cloudy skies. Now, this morning saw heavy rain, which is expected to continue into tomorrow, with showers in the afternoon and a high of 16 degrees Celsius or 61 Fahrenheit. So make sure to dress warmly and carry an umbrella. Now, before we go, let's take a look at what is going viral in Israel. average fluffy dog trying to get attention. That's all this basically is. And I appreciate it. I do. He's very, very cute. And
I love how
he's good at
Israelis
that.
are just so keen on the dog videos
I know.
going
It's
viral.
always really sharing that our dog videos, but
much.
also the rest of the world. And also ILTV. We love them.
We do.
All right, that is it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.43 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Natasha Kirchuk.
And I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you so much for watching.